backtrack a little bit here. When the story originally broke, um, it was kind of nebulous. We had a lot of different stories. The cops were saying something, the governor was saying something, the government was saying something different. The Pentagon came out. Kirby says, "Oh no, we don't know what they are, but don't worry, it's not a threat." And now we're looking at this nuclear suitcase scenario, perhaps all of that. So there's all of these weird narratives that are competing, and seem to be leading into this critical moment where perhaps shit is going to hit the fan in a big way here, Kerry. So let's backtrack your understanding of the last 2 3 weeks here of the narratives that you saw, the ones that you give maybe a little bit more credence to, the ones that you think maybe are complete total bullshit, and why all this might be being set up right now, Kerry.
Okay, well, I just want to draw attention to Trump's comments that you just played, because what he didn't say is he said the military knows exactly what it is. And then he said, and he doesn't know why they're not telling the people. Does that not sound a little bit like they're not admitting they're ours? So whose are they? In other words, and this is kind of what the theme of what I've got to say. And the other thing is to get night vision goggles, because as a person who has been working in this sector for 19 years, I can tell you that we know that in the skies, drones, UAPs, UFOs have been going on for really, going back not to at least to the 80 years ago, 90 years ago. Okay. So, and the Nazis had certain technology. So I like to put everything that's happening in a bigger picture, in a wider screen, rather than zeroing down on just little incidents, because this is a buildup, and it's definitely a buildup to something, and it's already happening. And so what I would say is, yes, UFOs over the White House, over the Capitol, whatever, going back to the Battle of LA. I mean, this has a history, okay, that most people are in denial over. Even the UAP hearing is completely ignoring history, which is wild and insane. I mean, it's like, if you do not pay attention to history, then you're doomed to repeat it, is the saying goes. But they're kind of flipping that on its head, and they're repeating it because they want to, not because they're ignoring history, because they want you to ignore history. So that, I object to the approach. Let me say that from the get-go. As someone who, and I've only been this, at least I was in this actually before 19 years, because when I was younger, I always paid attention to the skies, to, other entities, to ghosts, to you name it, right? The paranormal. I was always aware of that sector. And that was since I was a kid. So, and maybe you're the same way. I mean, those of us who start out as sort of psychic intuitives as children and didn't lose that connection, we've always known about other worlds, beings from other worlds. Now, because I got into this job where I interview whistleblowers from above top secret for 19 years, that puts me in a category kind of almost all by myself. It seems like, there are plenty of people doing investigations, but they don't talk. When you really talk to, sort of the saying goes, as the horse's mouth, you really get the straight information when you're in the presence. Okay, I did a lot of in-person interviews back in the early days. And when you're in the presence of people who are telling you, with military backgrounds, who have impeccable credentials, who are very straight up with you, like Bob Dean and, Pete Peterson. And, there's a whole echelon of Camelot witnesses, as we call them. So when you're in their presence, if the person is lying to you or not. If they're telling the truth as they know it. I mean, that's always a caveat, right? So if I tell you the truth, it's the truth that I'm aware of. It doesn't mean it's God's truth necessarily.
And one of those truths leads inevitably with all of these older whistleblowers also to this Project Blue Beam, to where they would fake this alien invasion to presumably bring about new control, maybe bring on the book some of the technology that was put off books here over the last century. What do you make of that leading into all of this? I saw an interview with Daniel, dark journalist, with Alex Jones the other day, and he was talking about a scenario, in his opinion, where this was leading into the government perhaps declaring some type of emergency powers, leading into a continuity of government, a type of situation here to presumably prevent Trump from taking office in January. At the same time, we're seeing some of the WebBot
Well,
data
I would,
suggesting that. Hold on, just a sec. At the
sorry.
same time, we're seeing some of the WebBot data suggest that that could be part of it, but there's also the melee contention is there's actual ETs involved in here too, not just the military drones, not just the perhaps adversary drones or the suitcase nuke scenario they're playing out. So everybody's playing all of these different angles. So where do you see us right now on Project Bluebeam? Is that part of what we're seeing now? At least let's start there. Some of your whistleblower testimonies with respect to how that would come about. Are we in that time period right now, Carrie?
Yes. Now, there's a huge amount of stuff here, and I've written so many articles, and I've also done shows on this leading up to now. Okay, so even over the years, going way back. So what we're talking about is, first of all, let's start with, I don't know, it's like 5 years ago, I think. I can't, because of COVID intervened, I get the years a little mixed up, but the bottom line is Randy Kramer, a Marine who claims to have been on Mars and the moon, to have been fighting aliens on Mars and the moon. And his testimony is, I interviewed him, and it's quite out there, and he is, he's still accessible, and he's still, he's training people on various sort of psi tech and so on, so on. So what
and he described how
stage,
his testimony was sanctioned somehow by his superiors also.
They were there. They were
right.
in the room.
Right.
They were standing right there, his Marine handlers.
Right.
As far as I know that his bodyguard / handler was there, but I also believe that his commanding officer was in the room. So he went on stage in this little tiny conference where I happened to also be speaking. And he said about 5 years ago that the military decided that they're going to have a kind of a Project Bluebeam so that they can command the narrative when aliens show up. They're already here, but when people become aware of
more
aliens,
aware, yeah.
And so in some cases become aware because they have no idea, other than watching a Spielberg movie and maybe saying that's a fantasy. There are plenty of people out there that don't think aliens are real.
Right.
So the bottom line is that he said back then he said within 3 years. Now it appears that COVID intervened on their plans, but this is the military talking to the people. And he said they're going to have fake CGI and alien holograms and various things to show that they can do alien battles with aliens, and that they're going to do this on purpose as a disclosure move, because after that, they're going to have disclosure. In other words, this is the preamble to actual disclosure that the aliens are here. Now, what happens?
And he had a time frame on that, when that would occur.
3 years from that date. I don't have the date in front of me. It's on I've done multiple articles on the subject. All you have to do is search his last name, C-R.
Was it circa 2017, 18, something like that? Does that make sense? It was before
well,
COVID.
it's around 5 years. So, because the Trump and the whole 2020 election, the whole, the COVID thing started in late 2019. So this could have been 2019 or 2018, because it was before COVID. We were up at a conference. So what I'm saying is, I stood up in the audience and said, how are you going to do a fake alien invasion when the real ones are already here? He lost his cool. He comes stamping down off the stage, gets in my face, and basically looks like he's about to kill me. Somehow he stopped, and he realized he was being filmed, for one thing, which they never released. And he basically, kind of lost it. So they have a narrative.
You've mentioned that before on the show, but why do you think that is? Why was he losing it?
Because saying the real ones are already here it blows their narrative. You got
the whole reason for doing it.
They wanted to have a fake alien invasion. That's what Project Bluebeam is all about, is faking it. But the trouble is, and it's a big trouble, it's not just a little trouble, is
Right.
that they really are already here. And they've been here for eons, and most people don't know. As Bob Dean said, the Anunnaki are walking the halls of the Pentagon, okay? And this is a person who has, military ranking, who has, all kinds of an excellent record. And he was one of the read in, old boys network, okay? He's passed on.
Yeah.
I've done several interviews with him. They're still worth seeing because they're just as relevant now as they were then. In other words, in fact, all my work could be seen as a precursor to exactly what's happening now. And the other thing is that it's
Let me
very
just add to that too,
yes,
because on top of the whistleblowers you're talking about, we also had the former Israeli space chief say that we had
sure.
extraterrestrial contracts with other planets, we had bases on Mars and all this stuff. This was mainstream news. So yes, so Kramer is angry at you for pointing this out. Yet here we are today now, perhaps a few years
He was
past
just
the
trying
deadline.
to own a narrative. So,
Right.
we parted as friends. I have no issue with him. The
Okay.
trouble is that, when you're going to put on a show, and it's
Yeah.
a show, right?
Yeah.
It was going to be, coming to a television near you. And so this would appear to be going down that road. And listen, the UAP hearings, we've had 2 of them. They've been setting the scene, because you can't really have an alien invasion when you spent, a good 80 or 90 years telling the public they don't exist.
Right.
Then people won't believe that there's an invasion. They need to
Right.
convince them that it's real on some level, not the real level, not the truth. Okay, now Courtney Brown, who is he's a university professor who started a remote viewing group quite a long time ago, who Dick Algier, who you've interviewed, used to work for as a remote viewer. Hello. And he also had other remote viewers, and they have what's called a track record. They are proven right time and time again. Otherwise, they don't get to play in that little pool. Okay. So Courtney's remote viewers and Courtney are now saying they're talking to aliens. They're in contact. And he has these roundtables with aliens present. You can't see them because they're cloaked, because they can't blow the whole disclosure thing on their own, partly because there's dark side aliens and light side aliens, meaning from our point of view, from the human point of view, some are our friends and some wish us ill, and they also, are invading us. And they've been genetically re-engineering us going back through eons. And all of this is documented not only in the Oceana Dean Voyager books, but in other places. Even the Bible hints at it, but nobody even gets it because they take everything so literally. It's all about genetic engineering.
And
But
what's the crux
nonetheless,
of the message these roundtables are giving him right now? He went from a couple of months ago saying they were doing these channeling sessions around the table to now in this latest video saying that they're actually appearing physically in their meetings.
because that's what they were telling him. Starting
Yeah.
back about August, they were saying that something was going to change, that
Right.
at a certain point in the near future, and within a 3-month period, that they were going to actually, that all of disclosure would happen. They called it a catastrophic disclosure, I believe they called it.
Yeah.
And they said this is good, and they said we needed it, and that there were certain incidents that had to happen to wake humans up to their presence, and that the dark side aliens have been fighting with the light side aliens in our skies. And I have witness testimony going back years on this. I have a guy, a DEA agent, who filmed these battles over all LA at night. He set up a camera before he went to bed every night and filmed him every night over the LA area. And then they firebombed his house, basically particle beam weapon, in a neighborhood in which not any other house was touched except his, and it was actually demolished to the ground.
Wow.
Then he moved to Hollywood, and he started filming again the battles going on with aliens in our skies, which is why one of the reasons chemtrails are here, by the way. Hello. And this is something so he continued to do, and then they killed him. Okay. And right before he died, he put out like a sort of a small video of what he shot. So when we talk about this sort of scenario. And supposedly the WebBot, which, by the way, I'm going to remind people, it's not Cliff High that's so brilliant. It's the WebBot. It's us. Okay. But we're not that brilliant, because I have to
Yeah,
tell
he's
you,
pulling on human consciousness and psychic abilities
only
en masse
what we
to create
talk
that.
about. But
Yeah.
keep this in mind. Okay. There's a whole hidden sort of, I don't know, echelon of knowledge that humans don't really talk about, most of them. Okay. So what WebBot does is what we talk about on the internet, first of all. And most people are not as informed as I am or you are. You understand? So you're going to get, like, if you're going to do a graph on how many people know about this and how many, and I mean know, not just guess, and then how many people think, and then how many people actually are in denial. It'd probably go like, this, okay? So you're looking at a consciousness, sort of measure of consciousness, which is what the WebBot reflects, but it has to be spoken on the internet or written, what I'm saying? So we are psychic beyond that level. Do you understand? So lots of people know exactly what I'm talking about. They know that the government is lying to them. They didn't have to be told by Cliff High or anyone else that the government has been lying to them since the Kennedy assassination and before. Hello? So,
well, a lot of people are still asleep to all of this lying, and they trust their government.
Exactly. But
Yeah,
the thing is,
we're all
9/11,
contributing to the
inside
field
job,
of the awakening process.
and 9/11 and inside job, I repeat.
Yeah.
And so what we're talking about is only measurement of what humans are talking about on a conscious level, but there's an unconscious level. There's a whole subterranean, real psychic aspect to humans that even the WebBot doesn't get. Okay. So what I'm trying to tell you is, and I just want to remind everyone, back in, say, end of July this year, 2024, we're still in that. Both Cliff High's WebBot and Dick Algier and his remote viewers came forward with something called the event. They thought it was going to be massive. They thought there would be a UFO involved. That's what the remote viewers saw. But they didn't exactly know what it was, but they saw, like some kind of explosion hitting the ground and various things. And you can go back and watch those shows and see what they actually said. Okay. From that moment on, it didn't happen. Now we have the potential of it happening. So what is being said by Juan O'Savin and others is that this whole preamble that has been going on is leading to an event. Now, Juan tends to think it's nuclear, and nuclear is always the safe place. It's a safe haven. But let me say to those people who said, oh, it's all about the nukes, finding nukes. Well, they're not looking for nukes in, all the countries in the world and all the cities on the West Coast and everywhere else, other than they always do that every day. That's just common. See, I was trying to tell people lately, there is there's a game you played as children, and you were given a picture, and it was a very convoluted picture of all kinds of things going on. And you were asked to find the one thing that was new or stood out. It's a game that, I don't know, I remember as a kid. This is what is the problem here, because what you get is the usual suspects, which is the whole picture, all the things that we've always talked about and are always known. And then there's something elements that are not known. And that's the alien question. Okay. That's the alien card that Hillary said they were going to play. And it's obvious that that's the road they're going down. Now, the thing is, the humans are not in charge of the aliens. So the aliens were telling Courtney over 3 months ago that this was going to happen. They said it's going to happen soon, and it'll go on for 3 months, and it will completely change our planet, and that they were going to be part of it, and that they wanted it. They were helping to create it. Okay. And these are supposedly aliens talking to Courtney and his remote viewers, who, again, have a track record of being accurate. And all you have to do is watch some of their shows and study what they say, and you'll see. Now, I don't always think they are on it. Okay. I think that there's a layer of secrecy that either they don't want to admit to, they know about and have been told by the intelligence agencies to keep quiet, and that's the same with Courtney, by the way, because I know a level that they are not willing to talk about. In fact, I know multiple levels they're not willing to talk about. And that goes back to my whistleblowers. And because I've been doing this for 19 years, so that gives me the long view as opposed to just somebody who started 5 years ago. But nonetheless, this is what's going on. So look at the big picture, chill for one thing, don't get in a panic. I mean, just understand that this has always been in the works, that we've been talking about Project Bluebeam for, I think, ever since ufology came to the fore. Okay. So this is nothing new. And the other thing
was a deathbed confession of Werner von Braun also. So it's been long in our history. Yeah,
except that he was a liar and a Nazi, but that's
yeah.
So
we can't neglect to say that. No, hold on a second here too. Hold on just a sec. So let me go back. So this event that you're talking about that both Dick Allgaier and Cliff High were seeing, it was in 2024. Although there's one in 2024, I believe you're referring to the one in 2023, which was the Luminosity event. That was something different. In 2024, what they were both picking up was July 13, more specifically the assassination on Donald Trump. Now, in terms of
that's not what I was talking about. I mean, I wrote articles about
there might be another one there you're talking about.
I have documented evidence of it. I am signed up to the future forecasting, group, and it costs a fair amount of money every month. I know exactly what I'm talking about. And even at the time, it stimulated me, that information they were getting, Cliff High and Dick Allgaier, to write an article with something that happened to me in San Diego around the same time, which is a bunch of people that we were doing a sightseeing thing down there of the ships in the harbor. And one of my high-level contacts contacted me to say that people were seeing a UFO land on a ship in the San Diego harbor. That was a piece of intel that came through when I was there in person. So I decided to write an article about what was coming because I'm also a precog and I can see. Now, one of the key things about that sighting, and I understand that you might not have documented this particular thing. There are many, Cliff High comes up with a lot of things. Some happen, some don't. Okay. But in this case, that particular description that he was talking about and that Dick Allgaier, and then they met and talked about it. So it's not like they ignored it. And it's not like they were seeing isolated incidents. They seem to be seeing the same thing. And it involved, again, and what it involved some kind of hit that seemed to come, remote viewing, if you follow the way they do it, they make drawings. And so each one gets to report their findings that they do on their own. And then they come together and they talk about it. And there's around 6 or 7 of them, depending on what's going on. And Dick Allgaier is always part of it. I've interviewed Dick in the past. I've interviewed Courtney. I've interviewed Daz Smith, who's a member of the Future Forecasting Group.
Sure. So, now, listen, maybe we're confabulating a couple of stories together here, but it's not really.
No, I'm not confabulating anything.
Okay.
I mean, let's not.
Hold on, Carrie. Hold on.
I know
Carrie, hold
exactly what I'm talking about. If
Carrie, hold on. So Cliff is in the chat now. He's saying. So hold on. Cliff is in the chat now. He says 2023 indeed was the Luminosity event.
No, this is not 2023.
Was the shooting this is at Trump
July of 2024.
And for the July 2024, his forecast was that something would happen and everybody would be discussing it. What the fuck just happened for the next
It would be 9/11. 9/11
shooting of the assassination of Donald Trump. Now, the remote viewers, when they were looking at July,
it wasn't an assassination. I'm telling you that I documented it. You can look at my article. I wasn't making this shit up out of my mind. I just, I got the information from Cliff, from his.
There was also a remote viewing this summer for the Future Forecasting Group where they picked up something happening from the sky. There was a control center. There was also something underground. Perhaps that's
why are we arguing about this? I know what I saw. I heard.
But you brought it up. My point.
People can investigate them. What is your point?
My point is, if you can let me finish speaking and not speaking over me, is the Luminosity event, the big one you were talking about, was 2023, not 2000.
I wasn't talking about that. I'm not talking about that.
When you were talking about this big event that they couldn't see past the event, that was the Luminosity.
No, that's not what I'm talking about.
Okay.
I mean, look, if you want to go back and look at my article, you can. Let's do that offline because people are here to hear, more or less my take on things. And I'm not mistaken. It's in an article. I wrote it at the time. I watched the ones on that Dick Allgaier did. And when you get to remote viewing, you're not having necessarily a conclusion, because until whatever it is happens, you don't even know if it was correct information. So I am positing that what they were talking about in July, end of July, has not happened yet, based on a lot of the ingredients that were put into the remote viewing. There's always these elements: a UFO, a hit on the ground, what did appear to be possibly a hit on NORAD, which that could be the event. And the fact that this had a wow factor that was over the 9/11. So it had to be something above and beyond your common, destruction that they've been doing around the planet, which includes, Ohio, North Carolina, Paradise, California, Lahaina, again, so we're talking about something above and beyond. At the time, I extrapolated from there, and then at the same time was watching Courtney Brown's remote viewers and his alien discussions. And they were talking about something coming in the near future. And again, that would change everything. And whether you want to put these things together or ignore it or isolate them, doesn't matter to me. But the point being is that since I'm your guest here, I'm simply telling you my take on it. Okay. You can disagree.
No, I understand, Carrie, and I'm just
I know.
saying,
I'm not talking about 2023.
Now you're interrupting me again. Hold on, Carrie. Hold on. What I'm just saying is that you said at the beginning of the show, let's hear it from the horse's mouth.
It wasn't shooting at Trump. It was not. Now, if Cliff wants to come to that conclusion, that's his business.
Okay, guys, I'm having a lot of trouble with my guest. He keeps talking over me and interrupting me. I'm trying to have a conversation here, and it's very difficult. I'm going to leave it at that for today, guys. Hopefully, we can come back and look at this subject matter and have uninterrupted conversation, two adults sharing their ideas without them speaking over each other. I apologize for today's show, but we'll try to reschedule this and come back in the next couple of days with more details on this show. I'm Jean-Claude Beyond Mystic. I love you guys. We'll see you again tomorrow night at 8 o'clock for the next edition of the Beyond the News.